Your band of intrepid adventurers have dispatched a group of bandits. They had the temerity to attack your camp at night. You backtrack them to their lair, dispatch the entire lot. So now the world is a better place. There are fewer bandits, raiders, what have you want to call them, in the world at large. And after having dispatched them, you've started to go through their stuff, which is, killing things and taking their stuff is kind of the bread and butter of your average adventuring group. And in the process, you have encountered a small chest. The chest is locked, and there is not a key anywhere in the camp. So this is something they probably stole and weren't able to open. Your dwarf, who is your acquisition expert, has been looking at it and decided to take a crack at opening it. So he takes the chest, sits it down, asks to be left alone. After about 20 minutes, you see him turning the chest around so it's not facing him. He does a little more tinkering, and he goes, you hear a toot, and a small dart flies out and hits a shield that he has set up. He smiles, he puts his hand out. The party sorcerer puts a silver coin in it. He closes it and says, I told you I knew a Dakaran build when I saw it. The sorceress grumbles and wanders away. 10 minutes later, and you hear a satisfying kick, and the box opens up. Inside, there is a couple of coin pouches. There's a small container with some jewelry in it, which is well received by the party. There appears to be some kind of magical crystal, kind of longish, wandish maybe, who knows. You hand that off to the appropriate people. As the acquisition specialist is doing this, he kind of offhandedly comments to the sorceress, make sure the coins and the jewelry get divided equally. And she grumbles under her breath, one time, your acquisition dwarf says, that we know of. Also, in the bottom of the little chest is something that causes the dwarf to go, oh my. The party leans over to look in the box, and you find yourself looking at a hole about an inch in diameter, and you're staring at the sky. It's bright, sunny, brilliant blue with a few wispy clouds. The dwarf picks the chest up. There is no hole in the bottom of the chest. He puts it back down again, very carefully reaches in, and he pulls out a monocle, 1 inch in diameter. One side is flat black, and the other side is the sky. Your adventuring party has just discovered the Monocle of Clairvoyance. Now, the most obvious feature that this monocle has, from the name, is that it has a permanent clairvoyance spell on it. And all you have to do is put the monocle to your eye, and you can see what the monocle reveals. The thing is, you cannot magically tell the monocle to look into any particular place. The monocle view can be changed by turning your head, looking up and looking down, and you can also zoom or fly in any direction, forward or back, at a speed of 120, approximately 4 times the standard walking pace of a human if you're not using Pathfinder or D&D or something like that, like one of the OSR fantasy games. So about 4 times faster than your average person can walk. So you can translate that to any kind of system you want to. And you can do this forever, as it never turns off. But that's the only way you can make this thing look at anything. And if you stop concentrating, the view will begin to drift at the pace of 5 feet per minute. Or per round, I should say. So 5 feet per whatever unit round you use. D&D or Pathfinder would be 6 seconds. Some systems it's as short as a second. So they just kind of wander away. If you find some method of discerning the magical powers of the monocle, you can in fact lock it in place. So that if you want to come back later, it will still be in the same place where you left it. There are certain complications to this, however, because the monocle is noticeable. So if you're looking through this at a person, they see a 1-inch hole in space with an eye behind it, like someone is looking through a peering hole in a door. And the backside, just as if the backside for you, the side you're not looking through, which I guess if you're wearing it would be the front side, is a flat black disc. Now, if you were to become invisible, then use the monocle, then they're just going to see the room behind you, because you will be invisible, but the monocle will still show the view of what is behind you. If you were in a completely dark room, an utterly dark room, and you yourself were invisible, they would see nothing. They would see black on both sides. Say if you had dark vision, that might work for you or something like that. It does radiate divination magic, and it can be used to target you with a clairvoyant spell if you are in range, because most clairvoyant spells have a limitation. Some divination spells don't. And it could be used to target a teleportation if it's looking at a room and not a person. You can't target a person for your average teleportation spell. Some systems might allow that, but the ones that I tend to be familiar with don't. So there are some ways to prevent the classic scrying teleportation trick that has plagued so many GMs in the past. But again, all you're seeing is where you tell the thing to go. The view can pass through solid objects to a degree. I would use the standards for the X-ray vision spell or magic ring in D&D, which says, for example, you could go through fairly thick levels of wood. You can go through some degree of stone, and you can't go through lead at all. Now, if you were to put the monocle inside a lead box, it would essentially shut off. It would no longer be visible because its connection to the outside world would be severed because the box was blocking its magic. Though inside the box, it's still working. But when you open it, boop, the monocle would appear again as a hole in space on one side and flat black on the other. So you can see the applications of this are pretty vast. You could do a lot of spying if you're careful so that no one can see this. Used at night, under most shadowy conditions, you could very easily follow someone and they'd never notice, particularly if you were above them. So you could just cruise at, 30 feet off the ground and follow someone anywhere, and they're very likely to never notice you at night. Because who's going to look up and see if there's an eyeball staring back down at them? Not many people. Again, it does radiate some divination magic, but it's not a huge amount. I'd probably say on a scale of, using a 3-tiered minor, insignificant, relatively normal, and then powerful, it would fall in fairly far in the middle of that. It's not insignificant levels of magic. It's also not an artifact. It's somewhere in the middle. So this could be used by anyone. There are no requirements. Of course, you would need to use some kind of magic knowledge to understand it through a spell or maybe through some research to figure out its powers, unless you just did it by trial and error. To find the locking mechanism is probably going to require magic, because it requires a specific command to use. And if you want to go somewhere with this and you don't want to sit there forever telling it to go, you could in fact lock it in the hold of a ship, down where the ballast is. And then the ship would take the view wherever the ship is going, and then you could come out at a later time. So you can move this around if you were to stick it inside a ship or an airship, so that have that go along. Maybe even stick it inside a container on a caravan of some variety, which is how it ended up here. Essentially, the view wasn't locked in place, but the monocle itself was. Who knows what the monocle was previously looking at, because it just wandered away and found itself poking at the sky aimlessly inside of a standard chest. So the magic still worked. It's just if someone were seeing this thing in the sky, it would look black on one side and black on the other, because it was inside a chest and there's no light inside the chest. So what would you do with this? You ask, how did I think of this? Well, I was at work one day and I was walking towards a machine it was about to operate, which the machines operate Well, at the day I was running 2 machines, each operate on a 60-second cycle. So it's a fairly rapid process. And I just, as I'm walking forward, I glanced down and there was a round piece of something. I think it might have been a washer actually. And it was reflecting light. And for the briefest second, I'm like, what am I looking at? And then it occurred to me, what if I were looking at the sky? And hence the monocle of clairvoyance was born. So, what would you do with this? Would you throw it into your campaign? Do you think it's too powerful? Do you think it's too abusable? How would it become a detriment to the party if they did not know how to use it properly and someone used it to focus on them with divination magic or a teleportation spell? So let's talk about how this could impact a campaign, yours or someone else's, and if you yourself could find of use of this as a player character. And also, have you ever had the inspiration for a magic item come out of the blue like that and just bingo, there it is.